Welcome to the Books of Titans podcast, where I seek truth in the world's great books. I'm your host, Erik Rostad, coming to you from the beautiful Books of Titans studio in Franklin, Tennessee. My goal is to read 200 of the great books over the next 10 years and share what I'm learning. I'll talk a bit about each book, tie ideas together from a variety of genres, and share the one thing I always hope to remember from each of the great books. Today I have a special episode and I'm going to share how to take notes in books. I'm going to cover the basics, give a tip for fiction, an idea for nonfiction, and then what to do when you are borrowing a book and you can't write in it. Well, the other day I picked up a book from my bookshelf, and it was one that I'd read 24 years ago. I'd read it in the year 2000, and I opened it up, and I was amazed that the way that I had marked that book up, how I had underlined, how I had put stars in there, was very similar to how I do things now, 24 years later. And so I've had a system, I've honed it a lot, especially since I started this project in 2017. And so I want to just cover how I write in books, how I put notes in books, and that sort of thing, because I've done different things over the years, and the system I have now is helpful to me, and I'm hoping it gives you some ideas on ways that you could start taking notes in your books. Well, I recently heard Spencer Clavin say that the older he gets, the more savagely he treats his books. And I'm in a similar boat to that. I used to view books as holy in a way where I did not want to write in them. I did not want to have a pen or writing device to where it could even mistakenly make a mark in them. And so when I was in high school and then part of college, I bought a notebook, and then I would just, when I was reading a book, I would have that notebook next to the book. So I'd have the book open. I would never mark in the book, but I would take notes in this notebook. And I still have that notebook. It's right on my bookshelf here. It's a prized treasure in the sense that it has notes from really good books and in books from when I was just starting to read. And it's like from all these different books, and it's in this one notebook that I have. And so I'm thankful for that. And some of those books I don't own anymore. So it's nice that I've got the notes. Whereas if I had the book and now I don't have the book anymore, then I would have lost those notes, but I still have this notebook. And so I did that for a long time, where I would just carry a notebook, write like the most important ideas or quotes that I got from the book, and just kind of carry that along with me. But then that all changed. I mentioned that book I picked off my bookshelf, so it must have changed sometime in college. But then I really got more savage and brutal with how I treated my books more recently, and especially when I started Books of Titans in 2017. So my goal for this reading project was to read more books, but then also to remember what it is that I read. And I found that if I marked up my books, it helped me in that process of remembering what I was reading. So there's something to underlining and writing in a book that turns it into more of a discussion with the author. It's like you're interacting with the author. And so I'll put questions in there. I will underline things. I will make stars, and I'll get into all that. But yeah, you can kind of think of it as you're agreeing with or you're battling against the author. And when you do that and you use a writing device in the book, it somehow engages part of my brain that just reading it doesn't do. And so I want to encourage you to have some sort of a practice, whether it's in a different platform, like you're writing in a notebook or you're writing in the books, but just some way to kind of battle it out with the author while you're reading. So here's just some general ideas and just some general practices that I do when I'm taking notes in books. First, I try to purchase hardcover versions of the book. I don't like to get super nice versions. So if there's like a leather-bound version of a book, I will actually not go for that one. I'll go kind of like the mid-range. Sometimes I'll try to find pre-owned books that are hardcover versions of the books that I want to read. But when you have a hardcover, it's a lot easier to write in it, especially the way that I write in them. I of the back cover. I'll get into that in a minute, but oftentimes I'm writing in the back of the book. And so if it's a paperback, it's just hard to write on there. You kind of have to have like a flat surface, whereas with a hardcover, you can kind of be reading anywhere, and it's at least a strong enough back to where you can be writing on that back cover. I use a Muji 0.38 black pen. And I love Muji pens. I'll link to them in the show notes. But they're a Japanese company, and I've fallen in love with their pens. I've been using them in the last 6 years or so now. So they have a 0.5 pen and then a 0.38. The 0.38 is perfect for books. I can underline and it's not too thick of a line, and then I can write notes in the back very small, or I can write notes in the margin. The 0.5 is just slightly too much ink, I guess, for I love the 0.5 for writing in a journal or a notebook, but for a book, it's just I can't write very small with that. So I like the 0.38. It's a fantastic pen. So just get a pen that you like, or some people think pens are horrible to write in with books, so they'll use pencils, and so whatever floats your boat, just some sort of a writing device. I buy these Muji pens in bulk, and each one lasts about a month. This is probably the most important thing I'll share in this episode. But in terms of marking up a book, what can help you the most is just to underline ideas that are new or different from what you currently think or you currently believe. Let me say that again. Only mark things, only underline, only take notes, only star, whatever you do, only do the ideas that are new or different from how you currently think or believe. And the main reason for that is you kind of want to train your brain just to note the things that are like, if you already believe it, there's no reason to underline it, because you're not changing any of your views. But if this is a new idea, if this is a new thing or a new way of challenging your mind, underline it. Because the other benefit is, if you pick up this book a year later off your shelf and you're kind of thumbing through it, you're going to see the ideas that really stuck out and that were different. And what's fun is to see if you adopted that idea, if that idea ended up taking spot in your brain to where that's how you now think. But if you're underlining everything that you believe and then everything that you think is great and that's a new idea, when you go back, it's hard to really determine the best thing. So you don't want to go overboard here and underline everything in the book. You really want to be particular with what you're underlining. And I just find that if I try to stick, for the most part, to just underlining things that are new ideas or are ideas that are different from how I currently think, that's a really helpful practice. So here's what I do in when I mark up my books. The very first thing I do is I open the front cover, and at the very top I write my name, and then I write the month and the year. I don't put the actual day, but so right now I would put February 2024, and then underneath that I put what book number it is for that year. So I put Erik Rostad at the top, February 2024, and then right under that I put 2024 book number, and then whatever book number it is, and just in the order that I've read them for that year. What that does is one, if I loan out the book or something, my name's in it. They know whose it is. And then secondly, if I lose the book or something, my name's in it. The date is just, it's kind of fun to look back at books and see when you read them. If I purchased the book in a unique bookstore or something like that, I will also add a line for, purchase such and such date in this bookstore in this city. But, and then just the book number, it's kind of fun to place those books when you look at them later. And then in the bottom, I've got a book stamp that says Seeking Truth in Latin, and it says my name at the top. And so I just put that in every single book, and that's a book stamp at the bottom right corner. So that's the very first thing I do, just kind of mark, this is my book, just kind of ownership there and the dates that I'm reading it, that sort of thing. Then I start reading, and I do these things in the book. So I will underline. I will put brackets, like, just kind of like a bracket on the side of the page maybe if it's a longer paragraph and I don't want to underline the whole paragraph or if it's a long section, I don't want to underline that all, but I do want to just kind of note it. I'll put a bracket around that. But underlining is my most common practice in a book. If it's something really important, I might kind of put like a second line on the underline, or if there's a particular part of the thing I've underlined that's really important, I'll put a double line there. So that's one thing. The bracket is another. I make use of stars, and so I'll just put a star in ink. Just right to the left of the words if it's on the left side, or to the right of the words if it's on the right side. And I've kind of established a star system over the years here. And so a star is, first off, it's just for a really important idea. And so in a normal book, there may only be like 2 or 3 total stars. So there may be a number of underlined passages or sentences, but there are very few stars. And that just helps me flip through the book and know, okay, if there's a star there, it is an important idea, a really important idea. I will also adjust the size of the stars. So I'll have like a small star just for something that is, I think, is good. But if it's like a big 1 star, then this is an important idea. I will do double stars. And so this is like a super duper really important idea for a double star. The double stars do not show up in every book. It is rare to have more than 1 double star in a book. And so just double stars are rare. But if I'm flipping through a book that I've read a few years ago and I see a double star in there, I know that this was an important idea, or at least at the time of reading, this was a super important idea. Now, brace yourselves. I also do a triple star. I know it's hard to believe, but I do a triple star. But here's the thing. I've maybe only done 2 or 3 triple stars in the 350 books I've read for this project. Triple stars are like a rare, life-altering, mind-bending idea. And a triple star, like if it's gone to a triple star, I've made the stars huge. I know 1 triple star showed up in Gulag Archipelago. I can't even think of the other books where that triple star would be right now, but it is so rare. But I've got a 3-star system going. A triple star is like this tops everything. So that star system is very, very helpful. Underlining, bracketing, and then also these stars. One thing I try to do, I don't do this in every book, but if I'm having trouble understanding the book, or if it's one where it's a long novel and I just need some help getting into it, I will try to recap each chapter, and I'll just write the recap right at the end of the chapter. So I'll go in and I try to do it in my own words. So the key here is not to just directly quote, find on page 6, just copy exactly what they said. But like I try to put in 2 to 3 sentences in my own words what happened in that chapter. That's really for fiction. If it's nonfiction, I will try to just kind of highlight some of the main ideas from that chapter. That really helps, especially if I've forgotten something that happens, like maybe in a novel, and go back to that chapter, look at my brief recap of that chapter, and it just kind of helps get me back in the stage of where I am in the book. So that's a good practice, is just, especially if it's a difficult book, just recap at the end of each chapter, and then just write that right in the book, and then you can kind of go back and look at it. And here's the one of the big things I do is I take notes in the back cover of the book. So these are important ideas. Obviously, if I've starred something, I'll just kind of rewrite it in the back. A lot of times when I've underlined something, I will also write that in the back. And there's just something, there's something about underlining it where you can somewhat kind of picture that what you've underlined, but the writing it out too, it just takes it to another level in your brain to where you're more apt to remember that than just if you've only underlined it. So at the end of a book, I'll usually have one or two pages of the back filled with notes, and I write pretty small. Just know that usually publishers will leave between 2 to 6 blank pages in the back of the book, so you can just kind of view this as a free notebook of sorts, and you can do your own little things back there too. Like if it's an important idea, I'll write it all in caps, or I'll put a star next to it, or just kind of do different things. I'll draw arrows between ideas and just kind of map out a book in that way as well. So use the back cover. I will always open up to the very last page, and that's usually like the back cover page. And that's where I start writing, and then I kind of go back into the book if I need to use more pages. I'm reading through the Bible right now, and I'm the Old Testament is split up into 3 different actual books. And the one I'm in right now, I'm on the 4th page of notes that I'm writing. So sometimes the notes will get rather large. I dislike a lot when the back of the book has like an image in it and I can't write on it. I love it when it's just a blank white page in the back there to where I can take notes. So the great thing about taking notes in the back cover is I can pull any book off of my shelf, open the back cover, and see the main ideas from that book. So that's a fun thing to do. And if you start doing this practice, 10 years from now, you can take the books off your shelves and see the main ideas right there. So that's a pretty cool thing to do, and just a way to kind of think about your future too as you're reading, just to know that you might be able to look back at these and see these notes. One quick idea here for taking notes in fiction. So for fiction, I'll usually set aside one of the pages in the back of the book. Usually not the back cover, but like the page right next to that. And that is my character page. And so as I come across characters in the book, I will just write their name. And some of these are a bust. You don't know when you're starting a novel if the person you're meeting in chapter 1 is going to be an important person or not, or if it's just kind of a quick character and they're gone. But you just kind of have to start writing names down, and then you'll start to understand pretty quickly who are the main characters. But what I try to do is, so I write their name down and then write particular things I'm learning about them. And so when I read fiction, it takes me a long time to get into the book, because I'm doing that practice where I'm writing all their names, I'm getting to know them, I'm writing character attributes, things they've done, things they've said in the back. And that just takes a while to get going, but it pays dividends later on. If I forget who a character is or what they've done, I can just flip to the back of the book, and here I've got kind of the main notes about that character. So that's a very helpful practice for works of fiction, to highlight the characters there. If it's like a Russian novel, don't even try the writing out of characters. Just go to your computer, search in Google for a character list, and print it out. Russian novels in particular, I'm thinking Dostoevsky here, or Tolstoy. Oftentimes the not only are the names in Russian, so they're just kind of hard for me to remember and understand, but the characters will also be called different names throughout the book. So they've got one name here and then another name there. And if you don't have like that guide, it's just kind of hard to remember that. So in those cases, I find a list of characters, I print it out, and then I'll fold it and put it in the book, and just kind of pull that out every time I read the book. And then I'll have that character list to look at. So yeah, if it's really hard, just go ahead and find a list and print it out. Or if it's like if it's a really long book, it's probably just best to print it out instead of writing. Because the other thing that the printing it out does is that it does focus on the main characters. The problem is there's usually spoiler alerts in those notes. So if you are disciplined enough to be able to print out the notes but not look at them, do that. If not, just start writing the characters in the back of the book. One idea for taking notes in nonfiction: at the end of the book, write down the one thing that you want to change in your life that you learned in that book. Usually with nonfiction, especially, like a smart thinking or a self-help type of book, there's usually like a bunch of ideas that you could implement immediately. Think of a financial book. There's probably a ton of ideas like, hey, if you could do this with investing or that kind of thing. Don't try to do 10 things. Don't try to do 5. Don't try to do 3. Just do one thing. And if you implement one thing from that book, it will help you to remember that book. But if you just write down like, here's the one thing from this book that I want to implement in my life. It's one of those things, again, hopefully you implement it and it kind of makes a permanent change in you. The other thing is you can open the back of the book, look at it later on in life, and remember that one thing that you learned from the book. Now, let me just cover taking notes in borrowed books. So say that, this idea of buying hardcovers for everything is just not in your budget. Here's how to take notes in borrowed books. And I did this for many years. I used to get a lot of books from the library. And so here's an idea of just how to take notes, because you obviously don't want to write in these, or if you're borrowing a book from a friend, you don't want to mark up their book. So here's what I do is to keep a phone handy. And you could also get like a iPod or something. Those are pretty inexpensive. I don't know if they still even make those. But the idea is just to have like a camera ready. I mean, the latest iPhone has a feature where you don't even have to use you don't even have to snap the picture. If you just hover over words, you can copy and paste those words. So you have the camera by the book, and if you read something and it would be something that you'd usually underline, just do that photo thing, copy the text, open up your notes program. The iPhone comes with a notes program. And then just paste that note, and then you can give a title to that note. And here's the really cool thing: you can tag these notes. So you could tag, do a hashtag and then the keyword that relates to that note. Then you can start collecting notes on different ideas, and you could have your own kind of like note card system based on what you're reading, and all from photos. They're very easy to look at as well. You can kind of go back. And so maybe when you're putting the note together, you import the photo, you put a title, and then maybe you put the page number in there as well from the book. Obviously write down the name of the book and the author in that note as well. But that's what I used to do is take photos of what I wanted to remember. And that's probably the best thing to do for books that you're borrowing. I know Ryan Holiday has a index card system, so I don't know if he marks in his books, but he does kind of write down ideas on note cards, and then he's got a whole system of organization for those, and those end up being very helpful to him as he's writing books, because he can just kind of take all the note cards on a particular topic, see all the books that he's read that have written on that topic, and then just kind of compile all that together. So the point here is I've presented a bunch of ideas. I want you to make your own system. You probably already have a good system in place. Hopefully there's some ideas here that you can take and integrate into what you're already doing. Maybe you use a highlighter instead of a pen. Don't get stuck on like what I use. I just offered those as examples, but get something that works for you. If it's photos, do photos and tag them. That could be a really cool system that you set up. You can do what I used to do of having a notebook on the side. I loved that. I love that I still have that notebook and that I can look at it and see all these different books that I read in college and just, look back at how they formed me, look back at how I remember those quotes, how I remember writing them down in that notebook. You could do what I do now, which is I kind of view my book, the book I'm reading at the time, as a notebook. And I'm taking notes in the back. I'm underlining. I'm treating it savagely. I don't want a pristine book by the end of it. I want to have battled with the book that I'm reading, and writing in it, taking notes in it helps me to do that. All of this can pay just tremendous dividends going forward, because you have the ability then to look back at these books and see the notes that you have taken. I hope this has helped. I hope you get some ideas from this, and I hope you share some of your ideas and what you do with me. And you can either respond with a comment on the website to this podcast page. You can email me at eric@booksoftitans.com, or you can hit me up on Twitter or Instagram and let me know what you do in your books. But keep reading, keep listening, and keep learning. I'm out.